At the turn of the 20th century, Tulsa, Oklahoma, had the richest per capita wealth of any place on earth. It was dubbed the oil capital of the world, the Magic City, and the City of Dreams.
Every face seemed to wear a smile. After spending years of struggling and sacrifice, people had begun to look upon Tulsa as the Negro metropolis of the Southwest. Going north to Archer Street for 2 or more blocks, one could see nothing but Negro businesses. Going east, you would behold Greenwood Avenue, the Negroes' Wall Street. There were homes of beauty and splendor, and the schools and churches were well attended. It was a city within a city, and some malicious newspapers took pride in referring to it as Little Africa.
Tulsa was the scene of a thriving, wealthy black community.
Black Wall Street was the most prosperous black-owned business district in 1921.
This was Black Wall Street. There were hundreds of black-owned businesses, everything from banks to pharmacies to the doctor's office. And black folks were making really good money. There were even 2 movie theaters, all black-owned and operated. Segregation was in full effect. We heard that there was a gentleman who owned a plane. Is that true?
Simon Barry was a pilot and owned his own plane.
Black folks were rich here, basically. They lived very good lives.
Many of them, yes.
When you have thousands of white men coming back from World War I, bringing back Souvenir Lewis, Spandau, and Browning submachine guns, and a variety of other weapons that they brought back from the battlefield. And then they can't find jobs. And the power structure within the city at that time, as was occurring in other cities, would enlist them in the Ku Klux Klan and blame their problems on Jews, African Americans, and Catholics.
But on this particular day, May 31st, 1921, a young black male named Dick Rowland, who worked as a shoe shine boy in downtown Tulsa, went into the Drexel building where he had been given permission to get water and use the restroom.
It was a typical Monday morning for a 19-year-old black man named Dick Rowland. He worked as a bootblack in the downtown area. Because there was no restroom facilities, Rowland had permission to use the restroom on the top floor of the Drexel building. In order to reach the top floor, he had to use the elevator.
Dick Rowland didn't look down when he went to get on the elevator, and therefore, because of the unevenness of the 2 floors, he stumbled and started falling, and he reached out to break his fall and touched his operator, and she hollered rape. And so they arrested, the police came and arrested Dick Rowland about 10 o'clock in the morning. And that afternoon, the Tribune came out and told what happened in the Blue Building. And after they told what was going to happen, then they said, it looks like there will be a lynching in Tulsa tonight.
The newspaper described Rowland as Diamond Dick and told of an attempted assault upon a poor orphan girl who worked as an elevator operator to pay her way through college. The article said that she had scratches on her hands and face. In fact, she was not an orphan. She had deserted her husband in Kansas City and had been served with divorce papers in Tulsa 2 months before.
Most of the news that people received came from their newspapers. It's incredible to look at the content of those newspapers and realize that it was a constant barrage of articles appearing concerning lynchings of black people. This was over and over and over again.
How did the black community respond to that demand to lynch this young man?
They were willing to risk their lives. They knew that they would be risking their lives to help defend Dick Rowland, and thousands of whites gathered in front of the courthouse. A white man approached a black man with a gun. He said, "What are you going to do with that gun?" He said, "I'm going to use it if I have to."
The two men argued. There was a struggle over the gun. It fired. The white resident was shot. All hell broke loose.
Blacks retreated to the Greenwood district, where they set up a barrier at the railroad tracks and were able for a short time to keep whites from invading their community. But because they were so outnumbered and outgunned, whites eventually broke through the railroad tracks and invaded what was home to Black Wall Street, the Greenwood district.
This was the result. 35 city blocks of the black neighborhood burned to the ground. Historical photos show black residents shot dead in the streets. The historical account is that at least 300 people were killed.
There were children that were here that had been armed by their parents, that had been told that they could come down to Greenwood and shoot and kill an innocent person. Those are the same people that we grew up with in our communities, that were a part of our society.
How many black people lost their lives?
There's really no way of knowing exactly how many people lost their lives, potentially thousands of innocent men, women, and children.
What is worse, survivors say they remember death not just in the streets, but raining down from the sky.
Many of our race riot survivors have commented that they remembered seeing planes flying overhead, dropping bombs, dropping nitroglycerin bombs.
There was a great shadow in the sky, and upon a second look, we discerned that this cloud was caused by fast approaching airplanes. It then dawned upon us that the enemy had organized in the night and was invading our district, the same as the Germans invaded France and Belgium. Looking south out of the window of what then was the Woods building, we saw carloads of men with rifles unloading up near First Street. Then the truth dawned upon us that our men were fighting in vain to hold their dear Greenwood, Mary Parish.
On January 5th, 1923, a white vigilante mob in Florida ended a 2-day rampage. It resulted in the predominantly black town of Rosewood being burned to the ground. It was triggered a few days earlier in the neighboring community of Sumner, Florida, when a 16-year-old married white woman, Fannie Taylor, claimed that a black man, Jesse Hunter, had assaulted her. Several groups of white men assembled to capture Hunter, believing that he had fled and was hiding in Rosewood with the help of the black community. At least one black man who was believed to have information about the assault was lynched. The dead man's body was strung up and displayed as a warning to the black community. Over the next few days, as news of the alleged assault spread, several hundred angry white men descended upon Rosewood. A gunfight between whites and blacks ensued, and many homes and other buildings were burned. When it was over, an estimated 30 black men, women, and children had been killed. Other black residents escaped into the nearby woods, then fled by train to Gainesville, never to return. Years later, survivors of the rampage recounted that Fannie Taylor had made false accusations against Jesse Hunter to cover up her extramarital affair with a white man.
The lynching of 14-year-old Emmet Till in 1955 was a turning point in the civil rights movement, an indelible image of savagery in the Jim Crow South. Now, the woman whose lies set his murder in motion has recanted. Jim Axelrod has the story and the disturbing image that cried out for justice.
It was the shocking picture that ignited the civil rights movement. 14-year-old Emmet Till in his casket. His mother, Mamie, wanted the nation to see the brutality of his killers.
I wonder, was it necessary to shoot him?
Till was visiting family in Mississippi when a story started going around town that he'd whistled at Carolyn Bryant, a 21-year-old white cashier at a grocery store. After Till's body was found a few days later, her husband and brother-in-law were charged with murder. At the trial, Bryant testified Till made lewd advances, verbal and physical.
In court, she testified to something that was tantamount to attempted rape. What she said was, that part's not true.
Author Tim Tyson writes in a book due out next week, published by Simon & Schuster, a CBS-owned company, that in an interview conducted a decade ago, Bryant took it all back.
She was just trying to say that nothing that went on between them constituted any excuse for anyone harming him, let alone what happened to him.
Despite overwhelming evidence, the men were acquitted in just over an hour by an all-white jury. They would later admit they did kill Emmet Till. 60 Minutes was able to get this footage of Bryant in 2004 by then Carolyn Bryant, but she refused to answer any questions, as her son made clear to Ed Bradley.
I have some questions I'd like to ask her about Emmet Till. I'm sorry?
It's too bad.
Will she come out and talk to us?
What I just tell you?
Tell me again.
No.
Emmet Till, a terrible, killing that really many people credit with starting the civil rights movement. He was killed in Money, Mississippi after having whistled at a white woman at a convenience store.
He's a teenager, right?
He was a teenager, 15 years old. And it was in 1955, which was earlier in the years. In the summer of that December, the Montgomery bus boycotts began, Rosa Parks, and that's really where a lot of people think the civil rights movement hit its stride. But Emmet Till's mother showed his coffin in Chicago, open casket, showed his mutilated face. And we talk about the power of pictures now and then. That's really what kind of changed the whole flow of the civil rights movement, when people saw the brutality that was carried out on this 15-year-old boy. Well, it was done with the testimony in a courtroom of an all-white jury. A 21-year-old woman was allegedly whistled at by Emmet Till, who bought some gum. She went back, told her husband and his brother went out and killed, or his brother-in-law went out and got and killed Emmet Till. Well, the testimony in the trial that took place that summer, this woman, Carolyn Bryant, who was whistled at, who is now 83 years old, gave some testimony that was not heard in front of the jury, but was heard in front of the courtroom, and then entered into the record of the trial, even though the jury didn't hear it, graphically said what this boy did to her and said to her. Now she's recanted. She has said that she didn't do it. Of course, Till is dead. Till's mother died in 2003. Milam and Bryant, who were acquitted of the crime, died earlier, and now today she has said, for a book, that she made up that entire testimony.
A Denison woman's now former fiance can't believe she lied to police, the community, and even him about being kidnapped and raped. Good evening, I'm Brandon Todd. First on Fox 4 News at 5:30 tonight. The claim was alarming and racially charged. 18-year-old Breana Harmon Talbott claimed 3 black men grabbed her, forced her into a van, and raped her. 2 weeks later, she's in jail for making a false report. Fox 4's Natalie Solis is at the Denison Police Department with the update. Natalie.
Well, Brandon, police say shortly after Breana Talbott turned up at that church, cut and partially dressed, her story started to unravel, but not before it spun out of control on social media, sparking outrage and fear in this community.
I was hurt.
Sam Hollingsworth, Breana Talbott's ex-fiance, moving on after a terrible betrayal.
It was hard to take in whenever I found out about everything.
Denison police say Talbott lied about being abducted on March 8th from these apartments and raped in some woods behind a church, where she showed up with cuts and no pants on. Police say much of her story didn't add up. After questioning her several times, they say Talbott confessed, admitting even her wounds were self-inflicted.
And even though we know the story now to be a hoax, there's going to be people down the road that are going to remember this, and they may not remember the outcome. And that may put a stain on our community that we can't get rid of.
Talbott now charged with making a false report, a Class B misdemeanor, and police want her to pay for the extensive resources they used to investigate her claim.
I think we've put as much or more into this as we do a murder investigation.
Hollingsworth says he and Talbott had an argument the day she turned up at the church about the couple moving after he joined the Army, but he can't explain why she'd allegedly stage a rape.
Someone who I actually trusted and was planning on spending the rest of my life with could actually do something like that to me and everybody else in this community.
Well, police right now not speculating on a possible motive.
No, I want the cops here right now.
Video shot Wednesday outside a Brooklyn convenience store
Sexually assaulted by a child.
has become the latest focus of outrage over alleged racism, with over 5 million views.
That's right, the son grabbed my and she decided to yell at me.
Teresa Klein accused a 9-year-old boy of sexual assault. It's unclear if she was faking the call.
And I am going home. Goodbye, 911 operator.
Police say they have no record of it.
Why don't you upload that to World Star? Go away.
And the store's surveillance video tells a different story, clearly showing the boy's backpack accidentally brushed against Klein. She was immediately given a nickname.
Go to store Carolyn.
Joining Barbecue Becky, Permit Patty, and Pool Patrol Paula, white people filmed calling the police on black people for seemingly minor infractions. Also this week, a black man babysitting 2 white children was reported to police in Georgia, and the felony conviction of a Michigan man who fired on a young boy who was asking for directions. Back in Brooklyn, last night, a dramatic scene. Klein returned to the store and reviewed the footage, taunted by a crowd.
What the boy's hand? Where the hell?
Then she backed down.
Young man, I don't know your name, but I'm sorry.
Apology or not, commentators say her first reaction speaks to the everyday challenges black people face, especially young people.
In America, black children aren't even seen as children. The fact that she looked at a black child and didn't see a black child, that is a bigger issue.
Raising questions of racism under social media's glaring spotlight.
The outrage growing over a woman who called the police on a young man who was babysitting 2 white children. This morning, we're hearing the 911 call. ABC's Steve Osinsami has this story. Steve, good morning.
Good morning to you. With the parents of these children had to get a call from police scaring them silly that something was wrong. They had to verify that this babysitter was supposed to be with their children.
I am being harassed and followed.
For so many reasons, the video Corey Lewis recorded on his cell phone has been seen around the world.
I got 2 kids I'm babysitting.
You see him being pulled over last Sunday by Cobb County Police, answering a call in the Atlanta suburbs, and the officer asked the 2 children he was babysitting to step out of the car.
We ate at Subway, at Walmart, went and got some gas. She pulled up talking about are the kids okay? Why wouldn't they be okay?
Someone had called 911, reporting a suspicious black man with the children.
See this black gentleman with these 2 little white kids, so I just had a funny feeling.
This morning, we're hearing that call to 911 from the unidentified woman who spotted them at a Walmart.
I rode around again, and I said, let me see the little girl. He goes, no. And I said, well, let me just see the little girl and just see if she knows you.
What she didn't know is that Lewis runs a youth mentorship program with kids of every race and has babysat these kids for the past 2 years.
He just got gas, and now he's pulling away. Should I follow him?
No, I recommend not following him.
And if I'm wrong, that's great. I'm thrilled. But if I'm not, then these kids are okay.
The children's parents are not happy.
They understood what was happening, and they both said that they were scared. They said that they were scared that he was going to be arrested. They said they were scared they were going to say the wrong thing and that he would be arrested.
Linda Fairstein stepped down from the boards of a college and a nonprofit charity. She was the top Manhattan sex crimes prosecutor when 5 teenagers were wrongfully convicted following the 1989 attack on a female jogger. CBS's Morning Saturday co-host Michelle Miller has covered the Central Park 5 for years and joins us with this latest turn of events. Michelle, good morning to you.
Good morning. Many are hearing about this case for the first time because of the series When They See Us. Linda Fairstein is played by Felicity Huffman, a role filmed before Huffman admitted to participating in the college admissions scandal.
They brutally raped a woman and discarded her like a piece of garbage.
When They See Us revisits Manhattan's Central Park 5, a case which drew national headlines in 1989. It focuses not only on the Black and Latino teens who were accused of attacking and raping a female investment banker, but also on the woman who helped successfully convict them, prosecutor Linda Fairstein.
These kids were on a rampage.
The accused later said they were coerced into confessing.
These young men were the proxies for all kinds of other agendas.
Sarah Burns produced and directed a 2012 documentary about the case.
I think a lot of people now with the new series are coming to this story and learning about what happened, and it makes people upset.
I didn't see a lady or hit anyone.
Raymond saw you hit her!
Who's Raymond?
The city of New York reached a $41 million settlement with the five in 2014, years after another man confessed, linked to the crime by DNA evidence. We interviewed Raymond Santana, one of the Central Park Five, after his exoneration.
What do you say to the people out there who just don't believe you're innocent?
You know, these people have their mind fixated on us being guilty. We have tried everything we possibly could to prove our innocence, and our innocence has been proven.
Santana now tells TMZ that Fairstein deserves the scrutiny she is now getting.
And even though it's 30 years later, she has to pay for her crime.
In the wake of the miniseries release, Fairstein has resigned from Vassar College's Board of Trustees, as well as the board of the victim service agency, Safe Horizon. In a letter to the agency's chairman, she says the show depicts me in a fictionalized version of events in a grossly and maliciously inaccurate manner.
I think in part why this is directed more at Linda Fairstein is that she has remained steadfast in her belief in the guilt of the Central Park Five.
In a statement to CBS this morning, Fairstein's lawyer said the series director Ava DuVernay ignored the vast majority of readily publicly available material about the case, all in the name of fabricated sensationalism. DuVernay declined our request for comment.
Well, Ava DuVernay was here at the table before the series came out, and it's very clear about all the research she had done, all the interviews that she personally conducted herself. And when you talk to the Central Park Five and you hear their story, and I asked them individually, does this film represent what happened to you all? And they said, it's eerie how dead on and how right they said Ava got this piece.
And if you're wondering what Fairstein thinks about the case, she talked to the New Yorker back in 2002 about the investigation. She said things like, a kid would say something like a dark-skinned guy who lives on 102nd Street, and these detectives would go out and find him. I think it was one of the most brilliant police investigations I've ever seen.
Which, by the way, is exactly how it's depicted in that Netflix documentary. They were exonerated. You look for an apology.
Where are they gone?
I don't know.
You don't know? So who ate them all?
Someone come round and they just ate them all.
Someone come around and ate the cakes?
Yeah.
So someone broke into a home and ate Mr. Kipling's Angel Slices. Didn't take the TV, didn't take, you know, some jewellery. They took these cakes.
And it was a black man.
Oh my God!
And it was a black man.
Oh my God!
And it was a black man.
Oh